Blessings, everyone. My name is Pat Clarkson, and I will start my talk by reading from the Daily Word. I'm reading to you the Daily Word for May 22nd, 2014. The word for the day is love. The affirmation reads, "Love is my sacred connection to all." The message reads, "Just as the sun has the power to warm the soil and vitalize the seed, divine love has the power to transform my life for the good. Each day I journey within to experience the simple gift of love in me. As I close my eyes and allow my mind to become still, I slowly follow my breath into my sacred heart center. My attention turns to the presence of divine love. In this presence, I am grounded, calm, and at peace. I am at one with the divine. Restored by the time and the silence, I return to my daily activities. I am filled with peace and love, which I express through loving kindness. Love is how I express my sacred connection with others. I am in harmony with all who cross my path today." The scripture is taken from John chapter 15, verse 9, and it reads, "As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love." The word I am sharing with you is love. The affirmation reads, "Love is my sacred connection to all." That concludes our reading of the daily word. The title of my talk is, "If you don't fight the current, the ride is amazing." How do you deal with people you don't like? Do you just try to ignore them? As you see them walking towards you, does your body clench and you begin to prepare for battle? What if I told you there was a way to get along with these people? Would you be interested? The answer is in a piece of scripture from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is the most widely quoted teachings of Jesus. It occurred early in his ministry. He had been out all day in Galilee preaching when he realized behind him was a crowd, an ever-expanding crowd of people following him. He went a ways up the mountain and he turned around and he began to preach to them. It is here that Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. My focus for today is the talk from Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 and 44 from the New Revised Version, Standard Version of the Holy Bible. This scripture has been called, "Love Your Enemies." "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." The love Jesus is talking about is the love of non-resistance. The Aramaic interpretation of this type of love means to be kindly towards someone, well disposed to them. It is not the love that you and I know as loving our partners or our children. It is a love of being amicable towards people. Jesus is advocating the love of non-resistance for when you're dealing with people you do not like. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity's metaphysical interpretation of love, is similar to the love that Jesus is talking about. Mr. Fillmore describes love as a power that joins and binds in divine harmony the universe and everything in it. A love that is a great harmonizer and healer. I am a retired adult educator, and when I was taking my training, I was told that teaching children and teaching adults are very different. Children are like an open book with blank pages. What you teach them fills the pages. Now, an adult comes to a learning situation with a full life experience and often entrenched beliefs. For an adult to learn, they have to unlearn. For me, that means I have to be willing to set aside my beliefs, my thoughts, my judgments, to be open to a different perspective on something I already know. Jesus is asking us to unlearn our definition of love, to unlearn it to allow the perspective of the love of non-resistance to become part of how we deal with those we do not like. Anger is often associated with people we don't like, and anger feeds on anger. It's like it just fuels this downward spiral of frustrations, exploding emotions, and often leads to harsh arguments. There's a saying that it takes two to tango. What that means is it takes two people to argue. If one of you refuses to argue, there is no argument. Now, I've done that. I've refused to argue. But within me, the anger still seethes. I may not argue, but I am not at peace. When we resist something, there is still energy. Like when you resist or try to ignore them, that's an energy you're expending. When you say, I'm not going to fight, that's an energy to resist. You may be biting your tongue, and you still have all these emotions you want to share. Non-resistance is coming from a position where these emotions are freed. They aren't there. You're calm, you're centered. There's no anger, there's no frustration. I remember when I first heard the term about being non-resistant, I thought, oh yes, okay, so that means you want me to lay at somebody's feet and be their doormat, or you want me to put on rose-colored glasses and just pretend that what's occurring is not occurring. The late Eric Butterworth, the renowned Unity minister, made a statement that said, you must know that there is only one way to get even with those who have wronged us. Love them and bless them and forgive them. Non-resistance does not mean being a doormat. Non-resistance is a way of self-care. Non-resistance comes from a position of centeredness and divine strength. Being non-resistant does not mean denying what is occurring. It is looking at what is occurring from a different perspective, viewing it differently. Some of you may be saying, but to be non-resistant is a sign of weakness. It is not. Living from a life of non-resistance requires great inner strength. Jesus is directing us to see within each person their divine identity, over and above the words and actions they may be using against us. A long time ago, someone had done something that really hurt me, and I was sharing with my dad my solution to how I would never be hurt again. Dad listened to it, and then he said, Tricia, you are building a wall to keep out the hate. You have to take this wall down, because if you build a wall to keep out the hate, you also keep out the love. I remember I said to him, but how? Well, if I don't protect myself, I'll be hurt again. And he challenged me to find different ways to deal with issues in my life. You see, my dad knew that behind a wall, the world becomes hardened. It's cold and bleak because there's no love in there. Love shines a light on a different path. There is no darkness in the light. You are basically wallless. The light shines a path that is on peace, your peacefulness, calm, centered. The other thing non-resistance does is it holds up a mirror, and I found this really interesting, a different mirror to the person that you are resisting. When you hold up a mirror for non-resistance, you don't show judgment, resentment, getting even. You show calmness, you show space for unthought of solutions, and you show divine love. Life is real. Stuff happens. In non-resistance, we are not denying what is occurring. We are choosing to see it from a different perspective and handle it differently. I am a scuba diver and I love current diving. First time I did it, I was pretty apprehensive. There are some really strict guidelines around current diving. You have to have perseverance. You have to be willing to throw out any thought that you know what is to be done in that moment. And you have to be willing to follow someone else who has done it and has taken other people through the process. In the current dive we were doing, we had to swim diagonally across a really powerful, strong current, and then we would slip into a current that was going to carry us to the end of the island. Learning to live from the law of non-resistance reminded me of current diving. We have to have perseverance, not to hook in and want to get even. We have to be willing to release old thinking, or we're going to stay caught in. And we have to be willing to follow a way shower who through words and actions has shown us how to live from non-resistance. Back to the dive. So when we got across the powerful current and we dropped into the current that would carry us to the end of the island, we were told to cross our hands over our chests, quit kicking, and just be still and flow with the current. We were told we could turn our heads to look to the right and to the left, but we could not raise our head because to raise our head would throw us out of the current we were in back to the one we had just crossed. And the dive master said the last time someone thought, I'm a good enough diver to do that, a boat picked them up 10.5 miles out in the ocean. When we move into the flow of non-resistance, we can just be. We are at peace. We are calm. It is when we stick our head up and think we know how the situation needs to be handled that we get thrown back into the current of humanness. And does it not feel like we are fighting the current? The current dive was absolutely magical. At one point I turned my head to the right and there were two barracudas. I could have touched them with my arm. And they weren't looking at me, they were just in the current with me. There were all these beautiful fish, beautiful colors and shapes and sizes in the current with me. Scuba divers, barracudas, schools of fish, all different, yet one in the flow of the current. From the love of non-resistance, there are no differences. We are just one. Please join me in affirming today's affirmation. I will say it once out loud and then ask you to join me. Love is my sacred connection to all. Please join me. Love is my sacred connection to all. And one more time. Love is my sacred connection to all. Let us take into our meditation that feeling of love. As we take a deep breath in, we allow the love in our sacred heart center to begin to expand. Love is within us. Love flows in us. The love within us cherishes and nurtures all. In love, we are joined in unity and harmony. In silence, let us be with the love that enfolds us. As we come to the close of our meditation, let us give thanks for the love that lives and moves and has its being within us. Love is our sacred connection to all. From love, we live in harmony. For the teachings of Jesus, we give praise and thanksgiving. And so it is.